tell them check out the blog, bro. YouTube channel called MKO. It's pugilism, boxing algorithm. M stand for Marvin and Kevin's initials KO. Yeah. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is the MKO Pugilism Boxing channel. Talking all things boxing, of course. Remember to like, remember to subscribe to this channel. More videos, more content coming your way very shortly. So right now we're going to speak to you about warm-up fights, and specifically the warm-up fights or the preliminary fights, or whatever you want to call them, the appetizers before the big one of one Joe the Juggernaut Joyce, and of course Dynamite Daniel Dubois. The two are scheduled to fight each other in this October, the 24th of October, in the O2 Arena. Apparently they're talking about 18,000 fans. We shall see. Definitely tickets available for, excuse the burp there, definitely there's tickets available as far as, you know, from what I know, from the website and that. So yeah, that's going to be taking place. But prior to that fight, they've got to get through warm-up fights, and I'll just start with the opponent of Daniel Dubois, whose name is Eric Pfeiffer, and this guy is a 33-year-old from Germany, and so far he's had only 7 fights as a professional. He's won all 7 fights. He's got a few decision wins here. He's got a few stoppage wins there as well. I don't think he's that much of a big puncher, according to what the 7-fight record says here. But he's definitely a quality fighter. I would say possibly of a higher caliber than Joe Joyce's opponent, which we'll move on to in a little bit. But yeah, so this guy, Eric Pfeiffer, he was a very, very good amateur boxer. I've just looked on his box rec, and you know, he was an international amateur, you know, and he also competed in the World Series of Boxing. And if I'm not mistaken, even Joe Joyce has admitted to, he said that he remembers Pfeiffer from the WSB days. So Pfeiffer is a guy who is a very, very good amateur boxer in the World Series of Boxing, which is a kind of league-based boxing. It's more or less professional boxing, because they box more rounds, you know, like five 3-minute rounds, I think, and then you go up in rounds as you fight for finals, like 8 rounds or 10 rounds or something like that. And it's basically like semi-professional boxing, but the difference is that you are literally fighting the best of the best. So each country will have a team. You know, Cuba's got a team, Great Britain's got a team, Germany's got a team, and you know, generally speaking, in the amateurs, all of the best boxers tend to go down this route. If you're an elite amateur, then the WSB World Series of Boxing tends to be the route that you go down. So this guy, Eric Pfeiffer, he's been in that route, and he's got what I think is his most significant scout, which is Tony Yoka, you know. And Tony Yoka is a standout talent. You know, he was boxing for France in the in this WSB, and Eric Pfeiffer, I've just watched a fight where Eric Pfeiffer actually got the win over him. And you know, as we know, if you know about professional boxing, Tony Yoka is a guy that's heralded as, you know, he's seen as, you know, up there as a prospect to you know, up there in this sort of a guy that's got a lot expected of him. You know, a guy like Tony Yoka, as good as he was as an amateur, you know, he's a guy who's, you know, people are really expecting a lot of. He's a guy who's, you know, set to do very well in the professional game and make a lot of money in the professional game. He's a guy that could be a future world champion. So the fact that Eric Pfeiffer has managed to beat a fighter like that in the WSB says a lot about his talent, says a lot about the caliber of amateur that he has. As a pro, you know, it's only 7 bouts in. He hasn't really I can't say that he's really got any sort of recognizable names. I'm just looking at the box right now. No real recognizable names on his resume so far, but in terms of potential, in terms of ambition, I'm thinking that he's going to be, of these two opponents, he's going to be the one who's as much as, okay, we look at this as a warm-up fight, Eric Pfeiffer, with going by his record and going by what he's achieved as an amateur, he seems to be the one he seems to be a guy that he's not just an opponent, quote unquote. He'll be there, I believe, to upset Daniel Dubois. He's a guy that, especially being an undefeated pro, he doesn't know what it's like to lose as a pro. So I believe he's going to be ambitious. His style-wise is quite upright, quite European. He's a big guy. Throws the straight shots very well. He's very correct in his boxing. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does against Dubois. Of course, I still think Dubois is going to overwhelm him and probably stop him, but I do think that this Pfeiffer, is going to put up some sort of resistance. He's going to, if nothing else, he's definitely going to give it a go. He's in his 30s now. I think he's like 33 years old now, so he's getting up there, but as a pro, he's still fresh. He's still new to the pro game, so I'm expecting a bit of resistance from him. It will be an interesting fight. It probably won't be a knockover job like the last guy that Dubois fought, but I think it is going to go some rounds. But I fancy Dubois to stop this guy Pfeiffer. Now, when it comes to Joyce's opponent, his name is Mr. Michael Wallisch. He's also another German, 34 years old, and he's a guy, quite decent amateur. I'm just looking through his box rec now. He's fought the better names by far. He's fought Tony Yoka. Of course, comes up short against Tony Yoka. He lost against Yoka by third round TKO. The other name, this guy Delalik, I don't really recognize that name, but he beat that was a 5-4 guy, beat him. And then there's another name that people should recognize, Efe Ajagba. That was in Las Vegas. He fought Efe Ajagba. He got the job done quicker than Tony Yoka. Ajagba stops this guy in 2 rounds, just a 2-round job. Bashed up by him in 2 rounds by KO. And I saw sort of the majority of that fight versus Ajagba. And, this guy Wallisch, he did give it a go. He sort of gave an account of himself, but ultimately Ajagba was just too much and just, ended his night early in 2 rounds, He also lost to Christian Hammer, which is a guy that is not really a world level. He's kind of a fringe world level. He's a decent international opponent, but Christian Hammer knocked him out as well in 5 rounds in the fight of a scheduled 12-rounder. So this guy Wallisch, he's got a record of 26-3. He's knocked out 13 of his 20 victories. But he has been stopped 3 times, so he's a guy that I think we sort of know where his ceiling is now. He stepped up a few times with Ajagba and Yoka, respectively, who's a prospect, not yet, world champion, not yet having fought for a world title, but he's a guy that's like a world-class prospect. So this guy Wallisch, we know a bit more about what level he's reached. He stepped up to near abouts the top level and fallen short. So he might be, of the 2 opponents, the less ambitious, but again, he might be quite ambitious against Joyce, because he'll know coming into the Joyce fight that if he can beat Joyce, if he can dethrone Joyce, then it could be talk of him versus Dubois in the future. It could be talk of him possibly fighting for a world title, in the near future. So, this guy, I don't know how he's going to come. I'm expecting him to sort of come over to England with a bit of ambition and try and put it on Joyce. But you know, ultimately, that's something that we'll have to see when it comes to fruition. But I definitely think that this fighter who Dubois is gonna box is gonna sort of put up the most resistance out of the two. I definitely think both guys are gonna win their fights by KO, but I think of the two, I'm picking Dubois to have the more difficult task on his hands than this guy. Although you never know, this Welsh guy could surprise me, but it seems that every time he's sort of stepped up to a decent level, he's been beaten, and he's been beaten by KO. Whereas the other guy, you know, he's only 7-fight novice, but he's undefeated, and he was a very exceptional amateur. So we'll see what happens, but these seem to be half decent warm-up opponents, especially in the case of Dubois. It's a good opponent there, you know, 7-0 guy, prospect, very good amateur. Joyce's guy is also quite decent, 26-3 record, and we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to seeing both men in action in the months coming. So I think both of those warm-ups will be in, I think, end of July, early August. I'll get the dates for you guys on another video. But until next time, this is MKO Pugilism, over and out. See you on the next vid.